How many people are new to kind of serverless in general? Okay, a couple people. How many people are hardcore into the serverless space? Okay, all right. I see your AWS Dev Day shirt. I love that shirt. Cool. All right, so let's jump into it. So my name's David Wells. I would consider myself a serverless junkie. The serverless world, it's kind of the biggest buzzword today. You hear it all the time. It's very reminiscent of the Docker days when Docker first came out. Everyone started talking about it, jumping on the Docker bandwagon, as it were. And it can feel a little bit overwhelming when you're diving into the serverless space with everyone talking about it and not really sure where to find the best resources or kind of the resources that you should trust, those best practices and what have you. So I'm basically tonight going to share with you a bunch of those resources that I use on a daily basis to, both learn and kind of share with our community. But before I start, serverless is a movement, right? There's this movement happening out there. You can see this woman, a real picture, by the way, basically shouting, "Down with the servers. We don't want them anymore. We don't want to manage them anymore. We want things to run smoothly. We just want to focus on our applications." And we can kind of see the excitement out there every day. More and more developers and companies moving into the serverless space. But yeah, we wouldn't really be here though if it wasn't for you guys, our community. So big shout out to our growing community out there. Thank you so much for all the contributions, all the tweets, all the forum posts, everything that you do. We're here because of you. And there's definitely some momentum behind what we're doing. When Austin first developed the framework, he definitely struck a nerve, hit a real pain point that people were having that Brian alluded to in the last talk, which is how do you manage all these things once you get into the serverless space? So thanks so much for the love. And there's about 30 people here tonight, so I'm expecting that to be 18K by the end of this meetup. I will wait. Okay. And tons and tons of activity on the open source repo. Tons and tons of issues open. Great pull requests coming from the community. So thanks so much for the feedback. Sometimes it's a little too much, but that's better than having no feedback at all. Basically, kind of where we're at with the adoption curve, in my opinion, and Brian alluded to this in one of his questions, we're kind of in this adoption cycle right now, right? Where you have enterprise IT and the rest of the world, and here are the different phases. This is a chart from @Swardsley on Twitter. Highly recommend following him. But basically, I think we're somewhere right around here, where the rest of the world is finally starting to dip their toe into the serverless world, while as usual, IT enterprise is adopting it slowly, and we are. It's exciting to actually see some of that. Some big companies using our technology. A lot of people out there though are still kind of in this phase. The grumpy old grandpa, server what? What is serverless? There must be servers somewhere. Of course there's servers somewhere, but the whole kind of concept is that you don't really need to manage them, worry about them, provision them, make sure they're secure, etc. A lot of people, especially on Twitter, like to complain about the name. It's kind of here to stay, so let's move on, shall we? So why all this hype? What is this movement about? What is serverless? Really quickly in a nutshell, it's code that runs on demand in a cloud of your choice. The biggest names, some of the biggest tech companies are offering functions as a service, and we're seeing more and more of those pop up every day. And basically, it allows for a couple of things. This new model of pay-per-execution pricing, where you're only paying for when something's actually running. You never pay for those idle servers. So just me personally, I've saved a ton of money switching like all of my side projects and what have you over to serverless. I don't need to pay for those idle boxes hourly anymore, especially when only me and my mom use my projects, but it's another story. Yeah, and it auto scales for you. It opens up this concept of kind of an event-driven world where you have functions sitting there waiting and reacting to events, where you don't really have to build all of that logic yourself. You can actually trigger functions based off things that are happening. And then there's also this notion of leveraging third-party services. Things that aren't your business's core competencies, like let's say user auth or sending transactional emails or sending text messages with something like Twilio. It's really about adopting all of these different pieces and pulling them together. So can you explain that to me like I'm 5 years old? Sure. So basically, you just write your code as usual. Deploy it up to a function as a service provider of your choosing. Relax in your hot tub, drinking a beer, and you only pay for when that code actually runs. All the different fast providers have a pretty generous free tier, and then after that you pay, per request, at the millisecond execution level. And scaling, yeah, no probs. They kind of handle that for you under the hood. So if you get a hit on New York Times or your front page of Hacker News, you don't need to worry about scaling. You only need to worry about all those mean comments that you get. But yeah, and this takes me to my happy place. It makes me feel strong, and really lets me focus on the app that I'm building rather than like the underlying infrastructure underneath. So that to me, that's kind of a quick summary of the serverless ecosystem, like what the serverless movement is about. So let's jump into some of the kind of ecosystem bits that I like to use on a day-to-day basis. These are the resources that we love and learn from every day. So I'm just going to run through these pretty quickly. So tons of blogs out there. This is how I spell blogs. One of the kind of the seminal pieces, and this is if you Google serverless too, it's one of the first things that shows up. This is a blog, Martin Fowler's blog. This was written by Mike Roberts, but it's I would say one of the quintessential primers for the serverless ecosystem. Super comprehensive look at the space as a whole, and if you're curious about what this is all about, highly recommend checking that out. The next one is serverless.zone. So this is tons of coverage of the conferences and events happening in the serverless space. Shout out to Assel Casalboni from Cloud Academy. He just did a great recap of JeffConf. How many people are familiar with what Jeff is? Or why people talk about it? All right, one person. So, yeah, okay, we got a couple of people. So, yeah, it was bike shedding on the serverless name. They said we might as well just call it Jeff. So now there's a conference called JeffConf. We'll see if the name sticks. Yeah, I'm holding my breath on that one. But yeah, good blog. Highly recommend checking it out. Serverless Code. This is an aggregated list of Medium blogs. So people with different Medium publications kind of syndicate through here. So there's stuff from like the Adobe Cloud team and a bunch of really, really good stuff. Highly recommend checking that out. Going serverless. This is by a guy named Rich Buggy, who shout out. He's one of our like community rock stars. He's all over the serverless forums, which I'll talk about in a second. But he dives like really deep into framework usage and like pretty common use cases that you're like, how can I actually do this? He writes about them and basically, has the open source repos to back those up. And then obviously, quick shout out to our blog. We try to write at least 3 times a week on there. You can subscribe, and if you do have any projects you've been working on in the serverless space, we love contributors. Our blog is completely open source. So if you do want to contribute, feel free to drop me a line or talk to me afterwards. Cool. So those are some of the blogs. There's a link at the end of the presentation to many more, but those are the ones that we keep up to date with, or I personally keep up to date with. The next kind of area to go through is video. So highly recommend checking out ServerlessConf's videos. Has anybody been to ServerlessConf? They've been, okay, we got a couple people. So they've had 3 different events. This is like going to college for serverless. I mean, these guys are deep in the trenches. Every single talk that I've seen coming out of this conference is amazing. And this stuff is up there for free for everyone to watch. Highly recommend checking that out. And that's from a company called A Cloud Guru. They do training like in person. They run ServerlessConf, and they also have a huge suite of cloud provider videos. They have, so if you're new to the AWS space and are looking to get into it, highly recommend checking that out. I went through their DynamoDB course. It was like 24 hours long, and it was only like $20 or something crazy. Super comprehensive. If you're trying to figure out what this is about. Same with Cloud Academy, which is a competitor of A Cloud Guru, but similar concept. They have huge, very deep dives into different pieces of the cloud infrastructure, which is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to get ramped up on when you do adopt kind of the serverless mentality, using the different cloud pieces of the provider of your choice. There's a lot. I mean, AWS has like 60 plus different offerings. So diving into that it's pretty hairy, and this stuff can really help out. We also have a YouTube channel where we publish talks like these and tutorials on how to use the framework and stuff like that. So make sure you check that out. Another one, and I love this guy. This guy is Ryan Lewis. So we do a framework release every 2 weeks. We try to keep a regular development cadence going, and he basically does a video recap of what happens in the framework. So if you don't want to read our release notes, you can listen to his smooth voice kind of narrating you through that. But yeah, highly recommend checking that out. Big shout out to Ryan for contributing that stuff. So social media, there's tons of stuff out there in social media. I'm going to focus on 2. Hacker News. So Hacker News, obviously, great source of content. It's next to impossible to find what you're looking for when you just go to Hacker News /news or whatever the URL is. So Algolia actually built a demo of their search product that basically will let you search Hacker News. So I use this on a daily basis to basically slice and dice what's happening in the space and find relevant kind of projects and what have you, and example architectures. I highly recommend checking that one out. Twitter, there's way too many people to mention. These are some of the highlights. Jared Short, John McKim from A Cloud Guru, Kevin Old. This link goes to a Twitter list that I've compiled. So if you're interested, just follow that list. And yeah, tons and tons of stuff in there. Moving on. Chat and forums, so a bunch of places to chit-chat about different serverless tech. One that I wanted to call out was serverless-forum.slack. This isn't our Slack channel. This is actually a broader community channel with people. Again, I would almost say that it's almost like all the speakers from ServerlessConf live in here. So if you are curious about how to do a particular thing or how someone solved a particular problem in the past, you can jump in here, ask, and you shall receive, basically. Very knowledgeable people in there. Highly recommend checking that out. We also have a forum. People talk about like broader serverless ecosystem things in here, as well as framework-specific issues and use cases they're trying to solve. Big shout out again to Rich Buggy and Rowan, another one of our contributors. They are in there. They're both in Australia too. I don't know why they're so helpful in Australia. I thought Canadians were the nice people, but anyways, big shout out to them for really, jumping in there and helping out. We also have a Gitter channel, so if forums don't float your boat, you want an answer now. We have a Gitter channel with over 3,500 devs in it, I believe is the current number. So if you are looking to solve an issue or how someone else did, jump in there and you'll get an answer relatively quickly. Cool. And then some code resources that I found extremely useful for kind of painting the broader picture of what you can do with serverless. The first one is serverlessstack.com. This is probably the most comprehensive tutorial I've seen on the web. It is a React application using serverless on the back end, using modern day ES6, ES7 syntax, and a bunch of other kind of new technologies. I think they might be using GraphQL too, I can't remember. But yeah, this is like a step-by-step tutorial and the code to back it up, where you can just literally deploy this thing and see how it works. It's basically my dream stack. And then we have a examples repository where we maintain a bunch of the different use cases. So if you are trying to connect into Twilio or Stripe or Auth0 or create a CRUD endpoint or what have you, or set up custom authorizers, tons and tons of use cases. Not going to go through all of them. The code is in there, as well as community examples that are contributed. So larger scale projects using the serverless framework, how they built different things. And many of these are open source for you to use and fork at your leisure. The way that I find most of these projects is doing this quick little search on GitHub. So .serverless, and then sorting by recently updated. This is going to pull back tons and tons of people basically using the framework and the projects that they're working on. So this is actually how we discover a lot of people using the framework in new and interesting ways. And then we also have a community plugins repository so the framework is pluggable. If it doesn't do what you need it to do out of the box, feel free to submit a pull request or write your own plugin. There are tons and tons of community contributed plugins that extend the functionality to do a number of things. One that Brian mentioned was keeping your Lambdas warm. So there's actually a plugin called the Serverless Warm-Up plugin, I believe, that will basically ping your Lambda function and keep it warm if it is in that hot path. So you don't need to basically write that logic yourself, which is pretty nice. Or there's a plugin to set up a custom domain on your API gateway. There's a ton of plugins. But yeah. Cool. And then just some really quick AWS ones that I found really helpful. There's a AWS in plain English. This was by OpenSSL or Expedite SSL. It's basically getting into AWS and looking at the 60 plus offerings that they have. They're all named something weird. You don't know exactly what they do. This was just like, this is what they should have called it. Like that one. And then Brian also, before the talk, mentioned this one, open guides. So there's it's so good. Yeah. So basically, it's walking through all of the different pieces of AWS and like some gotchas to watch out for and stuff like that. Like the AWS documentation is pretty verbose and hard to navigate, to say the least. It's pretty complete, but hard to navigate. So yeah, highly recommend checking that one out. And then a couple tools. One of my favorites, so just talking about this stuff, or even like building out a serverless application with a team, it's, you can write out a spec, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. Cloudcraft, it's a free tool. I think they have a paid tier too, but you can basically diagram out your system with a drag and drop interface, and it's just super, super, super handy. Highly recommend checking that out. Same with, it's kind of the same along the same premise. There's a tool. This is a Mac application that I use all the time called Monodraw. One of our team members, Mache, let me know about this one. But basically, you can draw your diagrams in ASCII art. It's like Photoshop for ASCII. So if you're trying to post something in a GitHub issue and you want like a awesome looking diagram to go with it, or you're wondering like, how the heck did someone make that diagram? Who has time to make ASCII art by hand? They probably use this or a tool like it. And then obviously, the serverless framework, right? So the serverless framework really exists to help people deploy stuff easier. When you start out with the, deploying your first Lambda function or whatever provider you're using, it's pretty easy. You deploy one thing up and you're like, cool, I have one thing in the cloud, great. But very quickly, it becomes unscalable, and like deploying something through the AWS user interface, there's quite a number of steps to like wire up an API endpoint to it, let's say. So it quickly, as you're building out a more robust application, starts looking like this, and you can no longer kind of reason about your system, or you're afraid to even touch your system, which is why, some people roll their own frameworks even, right? So that's really where like the framework comes into play. It's basically your code plus the serverless framework, which is just the command line tool, which packages and deploys your code to the cloud provider of your choice. That's really it in a nutshell. Now let's like actually look, for the people unfamiliar, let's look real quickly at what that actually looks like. So a project with the serverless framework, you have a handler file and a config file. So you have your code and your config. The config file, the serverless.yaml file as we call it, has basically the name of your service. So this one's just called the user service. It says where I want this code to run. It says what I want to run. So in this case, I'm referencing the handler file and a named export, a function named save user. And then I say when I want it to run. So I say on this event, on an HTTP event, when someone posts to the save user endpoint, I want you to run the save user function. And this is going to be running in my AWS account. Similarly, this is another example where this is a make thumbnail function, where basically instead of responding to an HTTP event, it's actually responding to an S3 bucket upload. So when a new image is uploaded to a bucket, I can automatically run that make thumbnail function, which is a pretty common use case that we see. But yeah. And then the code real quick just looks like this. This is JavaScript, but you can write in Python or Java, or tons of other runtimes are pseudo supported if you shim them. But basically you have a named export here, save user, that is being referenced in the serverless.yaml file you can see there in the corner. And really all it's doing is listening to the request and calling the DynamoDB SDK to put that user in the database. And then basically with the serverless framework, the CLI, you in the current working directory where that serverless.yaml file lives, you just type in serverless deploy. SLS is shorthand for serverless. It will then go ahead and package up your code and all of its dependencies, excluding the dev dependencies, because you want your Lambda function to be as tiny as possible, like Brian mentioned. And it returns back a live API endpoint. And that's really it in a nutshell. And this makes me like this guy that's discovered bubbles for the first time. Joy and happiness. Okay. This used to be a dog with a dog with a princess hat on it, but all right. I'm going back to the dog. This is a quick teaser. If you run this command with the serverless framework, something magical might happen. So check that out. I'm not going to go into details on that, but check it out. And there are tons and tons of use cases. Can't go through all these, but there's a whole nother presentation on this where, really it's, anything that you'd want to build with the caveat mentioned before, which if something runs longer than 5 minutes, it shouldn't really live in the functions as a service space. But jump into use cases over in this video over here if you are interested in seeing like code examples and the different architectures referenced there. And that brings us to the rainbow over the waterfall moment, where that's the serverless world. There's a lot of things you could do with it. Those are some of my favorite resources that I check out on a pretty regular basis to learn about this stuff and build different serverless apps. And that's about it. One quick announcement: we have a conference coming up, MIT, on August 17th. It is the conference on event-driven architectures. If you're interested in attending, check out that URL or talk to one of us afterwards. It should be a awesome event. Really excited for that coming up. And so thanks for listening to my rambles. And any questions? Yeah, you're doing it wrong. No. So when you deploy, serverless deploy, like the initial run, so it's compiling down to CloudFormation. It has to set up all the IAM roles to execute the functions and what have you. So that's what slow the first go around. When you redeploy, if you do serverless deploy -f and the function name, you can just deploy up your code, and it's much faster. Yeah, so there are ways to get around the 5-minute limit. You can recursively call a function, not recommended. You could get into an infinite loop there. Another thing that I've seen is so you can use a Lambda function to spin up an EC2 instance, run your long-running job, spin it down, and then return that back. So if you don't want to, if you really need that. Yeah, thanks for coming out, guys.